Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Abdullah from EYL and in this video I'm going to explain about my material is learning to read in the L1 and L2 and learning to read in English the initial. Okay, for the first is about L1 or first language. What does L1 mean? Okay. An L1 is your first language or your native language or your mother tongue. Every developmentally healthy human being has a first language. Often, but not always, this is the language that was learned during childhood before puberty and is the language that is most used and most comfortable for a given person. And first language are generally maintained for life with little over effort on the part of the speaker. This is because first languages are often woven into the personal and social cultural identities of the native speaker, and he or she uses the language to think and to interact with family and other members of their cultural or ethnic group. And then next, how are L1s learned? Okay, L1s are learned through a process known as first language acquisition or FLA. And this complex biological process, which is still not yet entirely understood by the scientific community. Though the intricacies of first language acquisition are beyond the scope of this article, the most commonly agreed human aspect of FLA are as follow. First language acquisition is the process of gaining the capacity to use human language where previously no such capacity existed. And the second is L1s are acquired automatically without conscious effort. And then next, and L2 or second language, what does it L2 mean? Or what is the definition of L2 or second language? Okay, an L2 is a second language, a foreign language, a target language, and or foreign tongue. And if you have an L2, you are a non-native speaker of that language. Unlike L1s, not everyone has an L2. If you have learned or are learning a new language, that language is your L2. And how are L2 learned? L2 are learned through a process known as second language acquisition or SLA. Like first language acquisition, second language acquisition is complex field of linguistics. Through many of its theories and ways are constantly under debate. The general common list of SLA are: the first is second language acquisition is the process of acquiring language capacity after another language or language have already been learned natively. And the second is learning an L2 requires conscious effort, and L2 are not learned during infancy and most often after puberty. And theoretically, an acquired L2 can only be known at non-native proficiencies. Exactly how proficient a language learner can become in second language can range widely, but the general scientific consensus is that an L2 cannot be mastered to the same level as and L1. Highly advanced L2 learners are often called near native speaker. And then thought capacity in both L1 and L2 can deteriorate from lack of use through a process called attrition. L2 capacity is considered to decrease faster from misuse than their L1 counterparts. And then next, uh, how are L2 learned? L2 are learned through a process known as second language acquisition or SLA. And then comparing L1 and L2 reading, linguistic and processing difference, individual and experiential difference, sociocultural and instructional differences. Linguistic and processing differences between L1 and L2 readers, differing amount of lexical, grammatical, and discourse knowledge and initial stages of L1 and L2 reading. And then next, okay, initial reading and decoding, stage 1, and major qualitative characteristic and mastery. The first is learn relation between letters and sound and between print and spoken word. And the second is able to read simple text containing high frequency words and phonetically regular words. And the last is sounds out new one syllable word. And then how it's acquired. The first is direct instruction and practice and letter sound relationship. The second is reading of simple stories using simple phonic patterns and high frequency words. And the third is being read to at higher level to develop advanced language pattern, new words and ideas. And then next, okay, initial reading and decoding stage 2. Alright. And major qualitative characteristic and masteries is read simple stories with increasing fluency and then learn to consolidate decoding sight, vocabulary and meaning context to read stories and selections. And then how about it's acquired? The first is direct instruction in advanced decoding skill, and then wide reading or instructional and independent material. And the third is being read to at level above their own to develop language, vocabulary and concept. And then next, initial reading and decoding stage 3. And major qualitative characteristic and masteries is for the first time may be responsible for reading independently to learn new ideas, gain new knowledge, experience new feeling and attitude, and last generally from one viewpoint. And then how about it's acquired? The first is reading or studying textbooks, reference works, trade books, newspaper, magazines, and then being exposed to unfamiliar vocabulary and syntax, and then systematic study of words and reacting to text through discussing and writing, and reading of more complex fiction, non-fiction, and etc. And then relationship of reading to listening. At the beginning, listening comprehension is still more effective than reading, and then by the end, reading and listening are about equal. And next, initial reading in decoding stage 4. Okay, major qualitative characteristic and masteries by end of stage. The first is reading widely from a broad range of complex material, expository and narrative, and then able to deal with multiple viewpoints. And how about the acquired? The first is wide reading and study of science and humanities, as well as newspaper and magazines, and systematic study of word and word part, and formal and creative writing. Okay, thank you.